All right, back with another episode of the Better by the Numbers podcast presented by Life Metrics. We're here at the third annual Roundtable of Longevity Clinics. I'm here with
Mariette Wharton.
And what are you doing in the longevity space?
I am working with companies on venture building. So working with all kinds of companies developing new technologies, whether it's from an AI algorithm based or a wearable or more deep biotech in terms of finding therapeutics or drugs to solve some of the cardiometabolic diseases or some of the other diseases that impact health span. And then I'm also starting a fund that will support financially some of these companies.
Okay, all right. So you're kind of doing the testing, the back end. You're bringing the technology to the forefront for these companies to be using to test their patients, essentially, right?
Well, a lot of the companies that are developing technologies in this space have a scientific or technology background, and I'm bringing more of a business background. So I have an MBA from Columbia, and I've about over 20 years of experience in business, building companies as a founder, an exited founder, and also just helping other companies to build their own businesses.
Okay, and how long have you been in this space specifically?
In the longevity space, I've been in the technology space for over 20 years, and then more recently in the last couple of years, and specifically in the longevity space. But personally, I've been really passionate about longevity protocols since I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I started weightlifting
Nice.
and having regular sleep when I was 15, and I just reaped the benefits. I wasn't reading it anywhere. It was just something that I personally recognized as being efficacious. And then when I was 20, I started doing intermittent fasting. And at that time, I didn't even know what it was called. It wasn't a label. It was just something that I started doing. And I noticed that I had significant improvement in mental clarity and focus. And then I was in college and I dropped like the freshman 15 effortlessly. So that was kind of what started it. And then in my early 20s, I started just doing a diet that people many years later started calling the keto diet. But it was like a palm-sized portion of protein and 2 fist size of cruciferous vegetables. So that was pretty much what I was eating at every meal since I was in my early 20s.
Wow. Okay. So you actually you saw the benefits in real time with yourself. So I guess that's what I was going to ask. How did you get into this space, or what made you curious about this space? So you started seeing the effects of paying attention to your health and lifestyle and how that correlates to longevity at like such a young age.
Yeah.
So were you were you writing down results, or were you just or was it just you were just feeling better and you were like, oh, it must be because of this or that, or like?
Yeah, I just felt better, and I recognize I'm just sensitive to how my body reacts to things, and I just recognized that it was really beneficial, so I wanted to keep doing it. And then as I got older, and we had some health challenges in our family with tick-borne illness, Lyme disease, and other things, I started exploring more about how we could use nootropics and some of the dedicated devices. So I've been using pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, which is a technology was developed by NASA in 1998.
Wow.
And then later DARPA. Yeah. And also photobiomodulation, which is a lot more commonly known now as red light therapy. And a lot of people are using that. I also at home have my own hyperbaric oxygen chamber and all kinds of other wearables. So I've just been doing this for a very long time.
Wow. Okay. So since for someone who's been doing it for a long time, I guess if you were to give someone advice, what's the one thing you said that has helped your lifestyle overall? I mean, I know there isn't just the one thing, but for someone seeking advice, where do they start? Where would they start?
I think clearly the evidence is around exercise, but the 3 pillars that are talked about a lot in longevity are the exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And those are the 3 fundamental things. And then I think the 4th pillar is just the emotional health. So having connections with people and having purpose and
doing community. I'm hearing about
Yeah.
community. Yeah. I'm starting to love that people are talking about joy and your overall happiness being tied to your longevity now.
That's a really good point you made. Yeah. And actually, I was really fortunate to meet Deepak Chopra in January at a conference. And he said that if you're have all the success in your life and you have the career you want and the family and all these things, but you don't have joy and playfulness, that you're doing it wrong.
Nice. I heard that and I had to talk to my friends and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds a little like woo woo. And I'm like, it is, but it shouldn't be, right? It's like traditional medicine won't tell you, all right, go out and be happy.
They don't. And actually I was reading something interesting about a scientist who's looking at breast milk and how the mother alters the breast milk in response to the health of the baby. So if the baby has an illness, then the breast milk will actually alter the concentration of certain components in it, which is really fascinating.
Wow.
So if you think about like all the interactions that we have, they're affecting our gut microbiome and how we are functioning and how we're metabolizing things. So every interaction we have, all this energy we're transferring and the joy we have meeting each other, these things all add up to
a healthier, longer life or shorter, depending on how you're doing it. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
What are you seeing in the longevity space change at Roundtable here specifically? Like, what are you seeing the trends that are happening that are either expanding this, helping, or hurting this industry?
Well, what you just mentioned, I think, is this recognition on the emotional and cognitive piece, because I think for a long time, medicine was focused on physical health and was focused on lifespan. And now this shift toward health span and really understanding that we need to intervene decades earlier in order to avoid having these chronic diseases that plague us in the last 12 years of our life. So in the US, there's a 12-year gap between lifespan, so how long somebody lives, and health span, which is their quality of life and how good they feel. And globally, it's actually a little bit less, but in the US, it's 12 years. So the recognition that we need to intervene maybe 30 years before that happens to reap the benefits later on in life.
Well, okay, so you said you started at 15, right? 15.
Well, it was, at least with exercise. I mean,
right. Well,
started
thinking about this at 15, and we're talking about longevity, and from what I understand, a lot of people, it's the demographic is middle-aged when they really start thinking about it, because they don't want to spend their older ages, you know, suffering or hurting in any kind of way. When do you think is the best time that you start thinking about this?
I think a lot of young people in their 20s, I've seen more young people at some of these conferences now. So I think younger people are starting to pay attention to it, that they want the best life that they can have, and they're starting young. I think, yes, as early as you can.
Wow.
I think even in childhood, because like, a lot of children are used to eating sugar and other things and that are not healthy for them. So even as early as you can, if you can recognize that those things are, every bite you eat is going to affect your insulin resistance. So it's these tiny daily habits that actually add up to your life, just like your happiness isn't the promotion.
Right. Right. No,
you're
it's
happy
not,
for a day.
and
then you go
that'll go away. I mean, you know, that's fleeting, right?
Yes.
So you want it overall. You want it happening over time.
So it's what are you doing every day to build those relationships that make you happy, that it's every day. It's everyday little interactions. And I think the same is true for longevity and health span, that the daily habits that we have, the little things, the choices we make all day long are what add up to whether we're going to have a healthy health span.
Do you think this space coexists with traditional medicine, or is it meant to not take it over, but I guess like this should be the new wave of how we look at?
That's a great question. I think it should be. I think it's a pretty long way off. Here you have a number of longevity doctors that understand this, but they're still really at the fringe. And most of our allopathic medicine is geared toward lifespan or treating infectious disease or trauma. And I think our system is really good at doing that. It's not so good at doing this preventive care. Although I do see a glimmer of hope, because the federal government, the Department of Defense, or Department of War, I guess we're calling it now, just recently allocated some funding toward preventive and lifestyle medicine, which is a huge shift. They've never done that before.
Wow.
And some of it is driven by the fact that the military needs to recruit young people into its forces, but they haven't been able to meet some of the minimum fitness and health requirements.
In young people.
Yes.
Wow.
Because there's so much obesity and there's so many other health challenges. So I think this recognition that we need to start earlier and earlier, and people in their 20s need to be adjusted so that they're healthier and more functional and they can join things like the military. So I think that's interesting. The fact that it's starting with the federal government and the military could have a ripple effect and educating a broader swath of the population. Because right now, most of the people who are seeking treatment at longevity doctors are in the very elite. There are a couple of companies that are looking at democratizing access to that information. I think over time with AI, there will be more democratization of access to longevity medicine. But at the moment, it's really concentrated in the hands of people who can afford $100,000, $200,000 a year or more to get access to this elite group of doctors.
That's what I was going to ask next. How are you I guess, what do you think is happening in the messaging that this needs to be more affordable for, I guess, the average citizen, the average American? Just the average person in life just needs to be able to go to a longevity clinic and be able to afford it, and maybe even it be covered by their health insurance, maybe at some point. Like, how are we going about trying to get this or interject this idea with traditional medicine, basically?
Well, I think what's happening is some of these companies that are doing testing like Function Health, they have relatively still expensive for most people to afford, but a lot more affordable than $100,000 a year. If you could get a test for less than $500, that would give you some of your biomarkers, because once people start to become aware that what their body is doing will affect their health, and what they eat and their exercise and their sleep, all these things matter, and the accessibility of some of the wearable devices. So a lot of people have an Apple Watch, or they could buy an Oura Ring or Whoop or some of these other devices that allow them to track their sleep and their other metrics. I think empowering people with that personal data will give them more interest and feel they have more control over their health outcome. So I think there is a shift of people recognizing that they actually have a lot more control over their health than they may have previously thought.
Yeah.
So that's one trend. I think that's one. And then I think the other one is there's some companies here, like this company, that Life Metrics, that's packaging up different testing. I think the more that becomes affordable and accessible, the people are demanding it, and they're going to go to their doctors and ask them to interpret these test results. The doctors will be forced to educate themselves to understand what they mean. So I remember like 15 years ago asking one of my integrative doctors about genetics, and could you help me with these genetic analysis, because I'd done 23andMe, and he didn't know. So the patient coming and demanding the information will force the doctors, hopefully, to become more educated. And then I think the third trend is AI. So AI is driving down the cost of analyzing the data and making it more easy to build tools because of the speed of development with AI. So I think these factors are all going to drive democratization of access to longevity medicine.
I love that. And I'm seeing AI like soar for like all of these companies. It's obviously being adopted very well in this space, but not so much in the medical space. So how do we integrate that? How do we let them know that the information is accurate, it's reliable, and it can help drive down costs?
So I think there's a movement toward AI in radiology and some other factors. And I know there's some places at Stanford that it's not really that publicly known, but they're starting to use AI and training doctors using AI. Yeah. So I think it's coming. I think it's unavoidable.
Right. Every industry has to adopt it at some point. Okay.
And I think people feel threatened by that, and understandably. But even 2 years ago, I was at a conference in Munich, DLD, and there was a presentation about whether AI could pass the Turing test. So could AI be perceived as a human? And what the study showed was that there were two cohorts. There were people that were given cancer diagnosis from an AI generated information versus a doctor, and they asked the patients which was more empathetic. And it might be surprising to learn that the AI was perceived as more empathetic.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I think human beings are just subject to our own biases and emotions, and you can train the AI to be what you want it to be. Of course, it makes mistakes still, but
it learns as you talk to it more. It learns kind of your behaviors. In Roundtable specifically, what were some of the greatest takeaways that you got so far this weekend for this?
I think it's really exciting just seeing the science that's being applied, and I think the thoughtfulness around trying to do things the right way and do the testing, and everybody has a different approach here. So it's really interesting. And there's some people that have actually said, really a cautionary tale that we should be a little more circumspect because the accuracy is off. I think that was a little startling and quite welcomed by me to not have companies just greenwash or say that everything's great, but say we're still at a point where we don't know everything, and biology is incredibly complex, and even these AI tools don't necessarily get it right. In fact, one of the presenters was saying that he did 2 MRI tests on the same day, and the results were 30% different.
Wow.
So So the testing is not as accurate as we may think it is. And so I think that's something that is great to be honest about, and we still have a long way to go with the science, but there are people here, in particular the Bach Institute, that are very focused on getting the science right.
Okay. And what are you most excited about? What are you most excited about to see how this space grows in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm just excited that people are finally seeing that this is something that people should be doing. So I think that for me, the democratization of access is the most exciting. Just if we want everybody to be healthy and everybody to live better lives, I think it's great that people are waking up to this and also realizing that they are empowered to do a lot about it for themselves. And so I think in the future, maybe you won't need a doctor as much as people think they do now. So now the doctors are coming up with the protocols, but with the technology that's available and the platforms and the testing, people are able to take more control for themselves, not only in their own actions, but tracking their own outcomes. So I think that's exciting.
I was going to ask, what do you think the biggest misconceptions about the longevity space are right now? From what I'm hearing is like, it's kind of a fad. There's a little bit of snake oil out there. But what is something that you can tell people that this is very real and you don't have to, I guess, buy into the idea that if some of the people that are selling you like, hey, if you do this one thing, you'll be fine forever,
Yeah, I think some of the supplements and some of those have not been verified. So there are a number of things that people are selling that promote anti-aging benefits, but there's no science behind it. So I think all of the things that are science-backed are pretty legitimate, or more so than some of the other ones. So I think looking for that. And I think I was saying before that if the 3 pillars are sleep, nutrition, and exercise, those are things, there's a lot of research behind those, and they don't cost anything really to do.
That's amazing. And how do we find you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn, Mariette Wharton on LinkedIn. And that's probably the easiest way to find me.
You had a podcast as well?
It's not published yet. It's been recorded. Yeah.
Not a problem. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mariette.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
That's it for this episode of the Better by the Numbers podcast presented by Life Metrics. Thank you so much.
Thanks.